Have you ever wondered what happens when a passionate young girl walks into a world built for privilege? Amira, a 15-year-old black girl from a low-income neighborhood, dared to touch a piano where every glance questioned her. They laughed. They dismissed her. But what they didn't know, she didn't come to ask for permission. She came to speak, with sound. And this time, music would be her answer. This isn't just a story. It's a journey that will lift your spirit and stir your soul. If this is your first time visiting my channel, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. And don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because every day I bring you real stories full of heart, emotion, and powerful inspiration. Thank you for being here. And now, let's step into today's story together. Under the dim lights of the Brookhaven Community Center in Illinois, the sound of a piano drifted from a small room at the end of the hallway. Not a casual tune, but a stream of emotion, bold and gentle, like a quiet conversation spoken only in music. The sound came from the hands of 15-year-old Amira Bennett, her tightly braided hair pulled up neatly, as she sat focused at the old, upright piano, donated by Harvest Baptist Church nearly a decade ago. Amira didn't look up. She didn't speak to anyone. She was lost in a piece she had taught herself from her phone, a challenging variation of Rachmaninoff's Prelude in G minor, Op. 23, No. 5. Outside, the thump of basketballs echoed on the hardwood floor, mixed with the laughter and shouts of kids. But inside this little room, there was only her and the worn piano keys. Amira, the voice of Mr. Elijah Carter, the music supervisor at the center, came gently from the doorway. His silver hair caught the light, and his eyes were warm with kindness. "You surprised this old piano again." Startled, Amira looked up. Her deep brown eyes flickered with shyness. "I was just experimenting a little, Mr. Carter." He stepped closer, holding a cream-colored envelope in his hand. "Actually, I have something special for you today." Amira took the envelope, her fingers trembling slightly as she ran them over the embossed lettering. Crestmont Music Academy. Open showcase invitation. Crestmont. She stared at him wide-eyed. "That's the top music academy in all of Illinois. I don't stand a chance." "I sent him a recording of your performance from last month," Elijah said, smiling with quiet pride. "An old friend of mine, he's a professor there now, heard it and sent this right away. They're holding a showcase this weekend. All you have to do is show up, take it all in, and let them hear what's in your heart." Amira said nothing. She had never left the borders of Brookhaven. Her home was on the third floor of an old apartment complex. Her mother worked night shifts as a nurse, and the only real piano she had ever touched was the one she sat at now, its keys faded, some pressed deeper than others. I could never afford a school like that," she whispered, her eyes dropping to the frayed edges of her sneakers. "You don't have to decide right now," Elijah said, resting a gentle hand on her shoulder. "But listen to me. Talent doesn't care about zip codes, and music doesn't belong to any one class." From the back door, Danielle Bennett, Amira's mother, stood silently, having just come off her shift, still in her wrinkled nurse's uniform. She watched her daughter clutch the envelope to her chest. Her eyes shimmered, not with exhaustion, but with something far beyond it. "My little girl is about to step into a different world," she whispered. And in Amira's heart, beneath all the doubt, a fragile light began to flicker. That morning, the sky above Summit Heights was unusually clear, as if the entire city had been polished for some extravagant exhibition. A weather Honda Civic rolled slowly through grand iron gates of Crestmont Music Academy, dwarfed among a line of luxury cars, BMWs, Teslas, even a pearl-colored Bentley parked near the main entrance. Amira Bennett tightened the strap of her handbag on her lap. She wore a simple blue dress, her only formal outfit, meticulously ironed the night before. Beside her, her mother Danielle tried to stay composed, though her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. "They've even got a lavender garden," she murmured, eyes locked on the manicured hedges trimmed like something out of a magazine. "Probably costs 3 times our monthly rent just to water those bushes." Amira didn't reply. Her heart pounded as the academy building came into view, tall and stately, with a copper dome and white stone pillars like a Greek temple. A gold-lettered banner hung across the entrance. Annual showcase and open house. Discover the sound of tomorrow. They parked between a Mercedes and a Range Rover. Danielle glanced at both sides and gave a half-joking smile. Looks like our Civic just rolled into Nobility Row. Amira stepped out, her legs trembling from nerves. For the first time, her scuffed ballet flats felt too real. Too out of place on the pristine white gravel beneath her feet. Her mother adjusted her old but clean blazer and gave a small nod. Let's go. Inside the grand foyer, they were nearly swallowed by another world. The ceiling rose over 3 stories high, crowned with dazzling crystal chandeliers. The marble floors gleamed, reflecting the steps of guests dressed in tailored suits and evening gowns. A piano played softly from a nearby practice room. Notes so precise they sounded like they'd been lifted from a symphony recording. Amira and her mother quietly merged into the stream of arriving guests. No one looked like them, not just in skin tone, but in the language of posture, the subtle smiles, the confident strides. Things taught early in a world they had never stepped into. A woman in an expensive suit approached, tablet in hand. Welcome. Are you here for the open house? Danielle nodded. I'm Danielle Bennett, and this is my daughter, Amira. She received an invitation from Mr. Elijah Carter. The woman nodded slightly, scanning her screen before offering a polished smile. Ah, yes, Bennett, referred by Mr. Carter. Please take a program. The showcase will begin in 30 minutes. Until then, feel free to tour the ground floor or enjoy refreshments in the East Wing. They were handed 2 thick, embossed programs. As they entered the reception hall, Amira glanced down at the performance roster. Names like Whitmore, Kensington, Archer. Below each one were a string of accolades. Soloist with Boston Youth Symphony. Masterclass with Lang Lang. Winner of the European Young Pianist Prize. Amira swallowed hard. Her mother said nothing, but gently placed a hand on her back, giving a soft squeeze. It's all right, baby, she whispered. No matter what they wear or what they say, you've got music in your blood, and I believe music always finds its way to the right heart. A Mozart piece floated lightly through the air as Amira stepped away from the Academy's art exhibit. Her mother was chatting with a staff member near the tea service. So Amira took the chance to quietly wander around the grand hall. And then she saw it, the Steinway Concert Grand. Placed at the center of a small stage at the far end of the atrium, the piano radiated a quiet authority. Its glossy black would gleam like still midnight water, the lid half lifted like wings ready to soar. No rope surrounded it. No do not touch sign. Amira's heart pounded. She knew exactly what this was, worth over $150,000. She had watched world-renowned artists play it on YouTube, but she had never seen one in real life, let alone touched it. She walked slowly, eyes tracing every detail. The perfect ivory keys, the polished brass pedals that shimmered like gold. Mesmerized, Amira reached out, her fingertip trembling as it gently came to rest on a low E key. Excuse me. The voice behind her snapped like an electric jolt. Amira jerked her hand back, as if the piano had burned her. She turned and found herself face to face with Chloe Whitmore. Chloe stood with her platinum blonde hair swept into a flawless bun, wearing a shimmering black dress that hugged her frame like she was headed to perform at Carnegie Hall, not a student showcase. Flanking her were 2 girls, one holding a mocktail, the other filming a TikTok. Chloe stepped forward, her heels clicking rhythmically against the marble floor like a countdown. What exactly are you doing? She asked, her tone deliberate, as if speaking to a child lost in a museum. Amira stammered. I was just looking. Then look with your eyes. Chloe tilted her head, gaze sweeping from Amira's braided hair down to her worn-out ballet flats. This is a Steinway D model. It's designed for professional performers, not for random visitors poking at it out of curiosity. A snort came from one of the girls behind her. Amira flushed. The surrounding conversation seemed to quiet down. People were starting to glance their way. I play piano too, she said softly, trying to stay composed. Chloe let out a laugh. Really? Let me guess. Chopsticks? Heart and soul? Or maybe some TikTok tutorials. She mimicked tapping the air like a child plunking out notes, then waved her hand dismissively. Amira swallowed the sting of humiliation. "I'm working on Prelude in G minor, Op. 23 No. 5 by Rachmaninoff," she said quietly. That made one of the girls behind Chloe pause and glance at her, but Chloe didn't blink. "On a Casio, I'm guessing?" Then she smirked and stepped closer, close enough that her next words rang out clearly in the now quieting room. "Don't touch things you can't afford." Amira stood frozen, her chest tight as if someone had doused her in ice water. She could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. The stairs around her suddenly felt like tiny, silent knives, sharp and cold. But just before she could turn away, a voice rose from the left, slicing through the tension. "Sounds like she can play." And I, for one, would love to hear it. The crowd turned in unison. A slim boy with soft curls and thin-rimmed glasses leaned casually against a nearby column, a sly smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Micah Ellis, first-year scholarship student, and apparently not the least bit intimidated by Chloe Whitmore. The silence thickened inside Crestmont's Grand Hall. Amira remained standing, gripping her bag strapped tightly, her gaze locked with Chloe's, not trembling now, but steady, like the surface of a lake just before it breaks into a storm. Micah took a step forward, his voice light as a breeze. "She was invited here, Chloe, and that piano's just sitting there. No one's name on it, unless you're scared." Before Chloe could snap back, Dr. Vivian Hale, the Academy's director, appeared unexpectedly in the growing circle of onlookers. Her hair was tied neatly into a bun, leather-bound notebook in hand, her expression unreadable, the kind worn by someone who'd seen every kind of performance. "What's going on here?" she asked, her voice calm but commanding enough to hush the entire room. Chloe quickly straightened her posture. Just a guest getting a little too enthusiastic around the performance piano, Dr. Hale. Before Dr. Hale could respond, hurried footsteps echoed from a hallway behind the stage. A staff member jogged over her and whispered something into her ear. She frowned. "What is it?" Chloe asked, already poised like she was about to offer herself as a solution. "Our opening performer, Julian Vander, was just in a minor accident out in the parking lot. He won't be able to play." Dr. Hale turned to her team. "We need a replacement immediately." The silence suddenly felt suffocating. At that moment, Mr. Elijah Carter, who had been silently watching from back, stepped forward. "If I may," he said, placing a gentle hand on Amira's shoulder, "I have a student who happens to be right on time." Dr. Hale looked at Amira for the first time, not as a guest, but as a piece of music whose cover had just been lifted. She turned to Mr. Carter, then glanced at the Steinway, as if weighing a decision. "What have you prepared?" she asked. Amira drew in a breath. "Rachmaninoff, Prelude in G minor, Opus 23, No. 5. A ripple of murmurs ran through the crowd, not because of the piece's name, but because a girl not yet admitted had dared to choose something so bold, so demanding. Dr. Hale nodded slowly. "Then the Steinway is yours." From that moment on, everything felt like a dream. Amira walked onto the stage, no need for direction. She sat on the bench, adjusted her posture just slightly, and placed her hands on the keys as if they'd always belonged there. One breath, one moment of closed eyes, and then the music began. The first note struck, deep, pulsing, like drums beating in her chest. Each phrase of Rachmaninoff wasn't just sound. It was resistance, pride, a plea to be heard. Amira's fingers weren't perfect, but they were alive. They told the story of a girl who practiced in the dark with cheap headphones, of early mornings begging the custodian to open the center 10 minutes early. And today, that music saved the entire showcase from falling apart. The audience held its breath. Chloe stood stiffly in the front row, the arrogance drained from her face. Amira played like no one else was in the room. Just her, the piano, and the piece she had carried in her heart her whole life. When the final note rang out, like the last whisper of a proud soul, not a single hand clapped at first. They were frozen, awestruck, and then applause erupted. From Micah first, then someone else. Then the entire hall rose, the sound of clapping filling the air like thunder, as if they had just witnessed something that couldn't be taught, that couldn't be bought. something that could only be felt. And there at the center of the stage, Amira Bennett sat still, her hands trembling slightly. But for the first time in her life, she didn't feel small. The thunderous applause was still echoing as Amira Bennett stepped away from the piano bench. The stage lights poured down on her like the world itself had turned its gaze. But Amira didn't blink, not from shyness, but because she had never felt so truly heard before. Dr. Vivian Hale made her way onto the stage, her normally composed and reserved face now carrying an expression that was unfamiliar, surprise, mixed with genuine respect. "You played the prelude as if you had lived inside every note," she said, then turned toward the audience. And I think everyone here felt that. Another round of applause followed. But this time, it wasn't about technique. It was about being moved. "Amira," she continued, her voice shifting from formality to conversation. "Where do you study? What program are you in?" Amira hesitated for a moment, then answered with the same honesty she had just poured into the keys. "I've never had formal lessons. I just watch videos on YouTube. And listen." The entire hall froze for a beat. "Listen," Dr. Hale repeated, half skeptical, half intrigued. "I usually listen to a piece a few times, then try to figure out on the piano myself. Sometimes I slow the video down to watch how their fingers move. I'm not great at reading sheet music, but if I really listen, I can remember." At that moment, a man from the faculty section rose to his feet. He wore a dove-gray suit, tall and lean, with the warm but sharp look of a musician who'd never chased trends. It was Dr. Henry Whitaker, chair of the piano department. He stepped forward, his eyes alight as if he'd just discovered a diamond buried beneath the soil. "Would you try something for me?" he asked. Amira nodded. He pulled out his phone, selected a short clip of Bach's Invention No. 8, and played it through the speaker. It was a short passage, just around 20 seconds, but intricate, layered, full of counterpoint. Amira stood quietly, eyes half closed, listening. When the music stopped, no one said a word. Dr. Whitaker gave her a slight nod, then gestured toward the Steinway. Amira turned and began to play the exact passage she had just heard. No sheet music, no practice run, just memory and instinct guiding her fingers. There were a few small slips, but the structure, the phrasing, the spirit of the piece, it was unmistakably there. When she finished, not a single person remained seated. A young faculty member whispered, "Perfect pitch." A student gasped under their breath. "How? Is that even possible?" Dr. Hale turned to Elijah Carter, who stood near the guest seating area. His expression calm, as if he had known all along. "How long have you known about this?" she asked quietly. "Since she was about 11, he replied. She played back a church hymn she'd just heard, without missing a single note. A female faculty member stepped forward, her eyes misty as she looked at Amira. "You don't need flawless technique," she said softly, "because you have something we can't teach, the heart of music itself." Elsewhere in the hall, Chloe Whitmore sat frozen, fingers digging into the armrest, her lips pressed so tight they turned pale. But on the stage, Amira remained still. And yet this time, she no longer felt like an outsider in a world of privilege. She had become something Cressmont had never anticipated, a living symphony, walking on her own 2 feet. Light from the crystal chandeliers reflected off her neatly tied black hair, now the undeniable focal point of the entire grand hall. No one whispered about the strange girl anymore. Now, every gaze was fixed on a prodigy who had followed no traditional path, who had just made the elite musical institution of Cressmont look inward. Dr. Vivian Hale stepped forward again, holding her tablet. Not the performance schedule this time, but a decision. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice ringing with authority, "after the remarkable performance we've just witnessed and everything Amira Bennett has demonstrated here today, I am honored, on behalf of the Cressmont Academic Council, to make the following announcement." A pause. Not from suspense, but because the room was holding its breath. Cressmont Music Academy is proud to offer Amira a special full scholarship, covering complete tuition, living expenses, academic materials, and a personalized training program under the direct mentorship of Dr. Henry Whitaker. A collective gasp rose in the crowd of parents, quickly turning into thunderous applause. In the front row, Danielle Bennett covered her mouth. She tried to stay composed, but the tears came anyway. Elijah Carter gently placed a hand on her shoulder, nodding with quiet pride, like a father watching his child step into a new world. Amira stood frozen, unsure what to do. Nod, say thank you, or run straight into her mother's arms. Pride, disbelief, and 1,000 emotions pounded in her chest like a drumline. Meanwhile, at the edge of the stage, Chloe Whitmore bit her lip, her hand clenching the showcase program so tightly it nearly tore. Beside her, Olivia Kane gently tugged at her sleeve, about to say something, but then stopped. One performance, one song, and that's enough? Chloe muttered, just loud enough for Olivia to hear. You played beautifully, Chloe, Olivia said gently, her voice soft. But the way she touched each key, it felt like she was telling apart her life. I think that's what everyone felt. Dr. Hale stepped closer to Amira, taking her hand in a handshake that carried both authority and genuine warmth. You don't have to give an answer right away. This scholarship is yours, and you deserve time to think about it. But she leaned in slightly, her voice lowered just enough for Amira to hear. Just know that music chose you. And here at Crestmont, it's our job to nurture that. The applause began again, this time as a second wave. No longer driven by doubt or jealousy, but by recognition. At the back of the hall, Micah Ellis gave Amira a big thumbs up, a bright grin on his face. Told you, he whispered to the person next to him. Chloe just got replaced by the real headliner. Amira could only smile, just a small one, then turned her gaze toward her mother, who stood in the middle of the crowd, hand over her heart, eyes filled with tears. And in that moment, everything that had once made Amira feel like an outsider, the old car, the scuffed shoes, the late-night practices and silence, suddenly faded away, replaced by a new truth. She wasn't knocking on the door of the music world anymore. She had stepped inside, and the door was now wide open, waiting for her to walk through. A week after that life-changing performance, Amira Bennett returned to Crestmont Music Academy to finalize her scholarship paperwork with her mother. While Danielle sat with the finance office, signing forms, Amira wandered the campus for the first time, as an official student. At the East Wing Practice Hall, the sound of a piano echoed from the third room on the left. The opening lines of Mozart's Sonata K, 448 for two pianos. The treble part was being played with razor-sharp precision, but the bass was missing. The door was slightly ajar. Peeking in, Amira spotted Chloe Whitmore sitting alone at the first grand piano, lips pressed tight, posture straight as a bowstring. Every note she struck seemed like a duel with herself. Rehearsing for the winter showcase? Amira asked, stepping in. Chloe turned, unsurprised. Dr. Hale assigned me this duet, and guess who the other half is? Amira gave a modest smile. I heard. Chloe closed the music score and stood. I usually perform solo. Duets are my strength, especially when the other person doesn't read sheet music properly. The words were sharp, meant to sting, but this time Amira didn't flinch. And I, Amira replied, have never played across two pianos with someone who can keep perfect tempo even with her eyes closed. The tension between them stretched tight, like a string wound too far, until a calm male voice broke in from behind. Perfect. That means neither of you knows what fear is. Dr. Henry Whitaker entered the room, holding two heavily marked full scores. You're different, technically, culturally, but music doesn't require you to be the same. It requires you to listen. He placed the scores down. This duet is a bridge, and I want the two of you to build it together. 1 week later, Recital Hall No. 2 became the stage for the first public rehearsal between two musical worlds that couldn't have been more opposite. Chloe, white, technically flawless, raised on a schedule of practice since the age of 4. Amira, black, with pitch-perfect instinct, raised on headphones and a second-hand piano. The entire school showed up, not just out of curiosity, but because this was the first time in Crestmont's history that a student duet was being performed between a legacy elite and a scholarship student from the working class side of town. The Mozart Sonata began with Chloe, metronome precise. When Amira entered, She came in half a beat behind, not out of error, but intention. She was listening to how Chloe shaped each phrase, then gently folding her own voice into the piece with warmth and fluidity. Not as a competition, but a conversation. The room held its breath. In the development section, two hands of different skin tones moved along the keys. They didn't touch, but hovered close, as if preparing to intertwine. Chloe glanced at Amira for a split second, no longer as a rival, but a partner. Their eyes met for the briefest moment, and they both gave a small nod, as if signing an unspoken agreement. The climax arrived at the final passage, where Chloe's left-hand tremolos crossed paths with Amira's right-hand trills. For hands, layered in motion, so close that even their breathing had to be in sync. One audience member later said, "I thought they collide, but no, they became one." When the last note rang out, the hall erupted, not because of the technical difficulty, but because something extraordinary had happened. Two people who seemed unable to share a stage had created something that neither could have done alone. Chloe stood first. She turned to Amira, extended her hand, slightly trembling, but her eyes no longer hiding their recognition. "Next time," she said, "should we try Rachmaninoff?" Amira smiled, taking her hand with a light squeeze. "Only if I get the hard part." The room burst into laughter, and somewhere in that laughter, two distant worlds began to blend. Every afternoon in practice room number 4, on the second floor of Crestmont Music Academy, a chaotic harmony fills the air. Sometimes it's breathtaking piano lines flowing like shared breath. Sometimes it's abrupt halts, sighs of frustration, and yes, the occasional flare of fiery glances. "Amira, you're playing with too much emotion." Chloe Whitmore tilted her head, brows furrowed. "Mozart doesn't need that kind of romantic sentiment. He needs brightness, clarity, balance." Amira lifted her hands from the keys and exhaled sharply. "And I'm just trying not to sound like a machine, Chloe. Music without breath is just math with a melody." They stared at each other for a few seconds. No smiles, but no anger either. For weeks of rehearsal had transformed two natural-born rivals into one of the most paradoxical partnerships at Crestmont. Chloe, the technician, precise to the note, every finger perfectly aligned, every phrase built on academic theory. Amira, the instinctive artist, playing like she was telling stories from the soul, even if her fingers sometimes danced off the traditional script. Each rehearsal was a negotiation between habit and risk, logic and feeling. But the strange thing was, they were both starting to change. One afternoon, Chloe paused halfway through the development section of their duet. She went still for a few seconds. Then, without a word, she gave a slow nod and closed her eyes, continuing to play without looking at the sheet music. The notes that followed were softer, rounder, more human. Amira smiled, saying nothing. She knew Chloe was learning to feel. On another day, Dr. Whitaker stopped by and noticed Amira practicing finger drills with a metronome. She had once loathed the tyranny of that ticking box, but Chloe had taught her a trick, how to turn each tick into a breath, not a barrier. And it worked. "You're holding tempo better through the bridge section," Chloe noted one afternoon, rare praise. Amira gave her a side eye. Was that an actual compliment, or just sarcasm wrapped in a music term? It was a compliment. "Though if you prefer I be sarcastic, you'll need to play a bit faster," Chloe replied, the corner of her mouth twitching upward. That was Chloe's version of a joke. One weekend afternoon, after a grueling 3-hour rehearsal, they sat beneath the red maple trees outside the practice hall. Amira handed Chloe a grape juice box while sipping her own mango flavor. "When I was little," Amira said, "my sister used to say I played like I was telling fairy tales through sound." Chloe tilted her head. "I was trained to play like I was competing in the Olympics." "Not a bad thing," Amira replied, meeting her partner's eyes. "You taught me control, like holding a kite string during a storm." Chloe laughed, a real, unguarded laugh. "And you taught me how to let the kite go." They didn't say anything else, but when they returned to the piano room, their hands touched the keys at the exact same time. No cue needed. And in that moment, it was no longer Amira and Chloe. No longer two skin tones, two upbringings, two separate worlds. There was only music, and two people creating something neither could have made alone. That evening, the grand concert hall of Crestmont Music Academy shimmered under a sea of lights. Glass chandeliers glittered above, their reflections dancing across the rich mahogany panel walls. Every seat was filled, from the front row to the upper balconies. Parents, teachers, students, even a few representatives from elite conservatories were in attendance. On stage, two Steinway grand pianos stood back to back, like mirror images in sound. Amira Bennett, in a simple black dress with a silver-lined neckline, stepped out beside Chloe Whitmore, draped in a navy blue gown, hair pinned in its signature bun. But this time, no one saw contrast. They saw collaboration. The two girls gave a quiet bow, then took their seats. No announcements, no dramatic lighting, just silence and the steady rhythm of two hearts, synced. Then came the first notes of Mozart's Sonata in D major, K, 448. The opening, bright, playful, felt like a conversation between two souls. Chloe began with firm, grounded left hand. Amira responded with airy chords that floated like wind. Their sound blended, not competing, but completing. No one overshadowed. No one disappeared. In the middle section, dense with counterpoint, the tempo quickened. Notes raced like twin rivers converging at a bend. Four hands, two skin tones, striking black and white keys with a harmony that felt destined. The audience held its breath. And then the climax, the most dramatic passage. Amira closed her eyes, her fingers guided by feel and memory. Chloe glanced at her, then did the same. They played as if vision was irrelevant, as if reading the music didn't matter anymore. All that mattered was trust. When the final note rang out, lingering like a thread of smoke in the air, the hall didn't erupt. Not yet. They stayed silent, not because they weren't amazed, but because no one wanted to break the spell. Then, the first applause came from Dr. Henry Whitaker, and suddenly, the room rose as one. Applause thundered through the air like waves crashing to shore. Whistles, cheers, and yes, tears. A quiet lesson echoed beneath the noise. Technique can be taught. Privilege can be inherited. But connection through music, that can only be given. At the center of the stage, Amira and Chloe rose and took each other's hand as they bowed. And in that moment, Crestmont didn't just witness an impressive performance. It witnessed history. A moment where two distant worlds found common ground through the one language that transcends every barrier: music. The winter showcase came to a close, but the echo of their duet lingered in every heart like a song not yet finished. Students whispered in excited clusters. Parents lined the halls shaking hands, sharing impressions. Those who had once dismissed Amira now spoke her name with respect. And those who had once been wary of Chloe now looked at her differently. Not as a cold, privileged girl, but as an artist who had learned to listen. Backstage, Dr. Vivian Hale handed Amira a small box. Inside was an honor student card, awarded for outstanding artistic contribution to the academy. Chloe, standing right beside her, was the only other student honored that evening. "My dear," Dr. Hale said softly, "you didn't just prove your ability. You reminded all of us that music has no zip code. If a heart knows how to feel, it will find its voice." Amira felt her eyes sting, not from surprise, but from the quiet truth that, for the first time, she truly believed she belonged. Out in the lobby, she spotted her mother waiting, still in her old coat, paper coffee cup in hand, eyes glowing with pride. Danielle said nothing. She simply opened her arms, and Amira fell into them like a melody returning to its root note. After the performance, a photograph began to circulate on the Academy's bulletin boards, a candid shot of two girls seated at facing pianos, their hands nearly touching, soft light cascading down like quiet moonlight. Beneath the photo, a single line was printed: "Talent needs no permission, only a chance." Years later, when Amira Bennett's name appeared on the official student roster of Crestmont Music Academy, no one remembered the neighborhood she came from or the balance in her family's bank account. They only remembered the girl who once dared to place her hand on a forbidden piano, and instead of pulling back, she let the music speak.